Hey guys, and welcome to another podcast. Our guest today is a man who claimed to be a man of science, yet he diagnosed the soul of civilization. He blurred the lines between medicine, philosophy, and art until they became one thing, which is psychoanalysis. A man scientists try to bury, yet the world refuses to forget. So please join me in welcoming Sigmund Freud. Welcome to our podcast.
Hello, and thank you for having me today.
Well, it's a pleasure. Dr. Freud, to begin. Today, the world sees you as one of the most famous physicians who changed the face of science. However, there is a strange admission in your memoirs suggesting that your relationship with medicine was not love at first sight. In fact, perhaps it wasn't love at all.
Looking back at my life now, I say it clearly. Neither in my childhood nor at any other time did I feel a particular calling for the medical profession. Rather, I was driven by a kind of curiosity that was always more focused on human affairs than on natural sciences. In fact, I had not yet even grasped the basic importance of observation.
Yet you choose to enter medical school and pursue it as your specialty.
I never wanted to become a doctor. At no point did I feel that I belonged to this field, nor did I ever truly like the method of scientific observation based on direct experimentation, the very foundation of science. My original ambition was to study philosophy, to simply observe and offer my reflections on the world and humanity while enjoying my coffee and cigars. This might seem strange for someone starting his medical memoirs this way, and it may provoke my fellow physicians, but this is the true key to my character. A young man enamored with literature and philosophy, whose parents, due to his academic excellence, pushed him into medical school because it was a top-tier faculty. Thus, I spent my life trying to push the medicine I was forced into toward the philosophy I loved, in a perfect manifestation of the symbolic killing of the father, a concept I was the first to articulate.
What do you mean by the symbolic killing of the father?
The symbolic killing of the father is a necessary psychological process aimed at achieving independence and liberation from dependency. It simply means that an individual shatters the idealized image they formed of their father during childhood to transcend his intellectual and emotional authority. This act does not imply physical harm. Rather, it is the ending of the father's dominance within the person's mind. Consequently, the individual stops being a mere echo of their father's ideas and values and begins to form their own convictions and independent voice. Without this symbolic killing, one remains a psychological child, unable to make their own decisions. Those who achieve it are those who have managed to see their father as a fallible human being and, in doing so, have reclaimed the throne of leadership to become the sole master of their own life and destiny.
So does that mean that your symbolic murder was born from the resentment of being forced to study medicine?
Yes, you could say that. In our consciousness, the father represents the law and expectation. My father's vision was for me to be a prestigious and successful physician in Vienna. Had I simply conformed to that path, I would have lost my true essence. I would have become a mere echo of what society demanded, remaining forever that child who fears disappointing his parents. Therefore, I chose to seek my independence quietly and thoughtfully. I did not reject medicine openly out of respect for my family's feelings. Instead, I did something more profound. I moved beyond the traditional doctor my father envisioned in the laboratories, and in his place, I gave life to the psychoanalyst, the one who explores the hidden depths of the human soul.
I believe many young people still suffer from this today. They feel forced to walk paths that don't represent them or their passions, whether due to family pressure or difficult circumstances. Truth to be told, I'm one of them. So what is your advice for us?
My dear friend, do not let your inner voice be silenced. I spent years studying anatomy while my heart was with the poets. My secret was this: I did not leave the path I was forced into, but I made it my own. I looked for the human inside the medical, and that is how I found myself. Do not just obey, and do not just rebel. Sublimate your struggle into something that belongs to you alone.
Okay, so now tell us about what happened after you entered the university.
I entered medical school in Vienna in 1873 at the age of 17, and that was the beginning of my struggles. First of all, I was Jewish in a completely unwelcoming environment. I felt like an outsider before Elle even uttered a word. This rejection gave me the greatest gift a scholar could ever receive: independence of judgment. Since I was excluded from the group, I no longer cared about pleasing them or following the herd. I said to myself, since they reject me as a human being, I have no obligation to conform to them as a scientist. It was this isolation that later enabled me to stand alone against the entire world when I presented my provocative theories on sexuality and the unconscious.
Okay, at that time, Darwin's theories were shaking the world, and the second industrial revolution was in full swing. With the advance of electricity and the telephone, men began to feel like the master of the world. Yet, you set all of that aside, preoccupied with something quite strange, the world of dreams.
During that period, physiology was undergoing a true revolution. Driven by industrial progress, physicians began to view the human body as a mechanical or electrical machine muscles, moving through signals and neural electricity. Neuroscience advanced significantly under my professor, Ernst Brücke, who left a profound impact on me. One grew fond of physiology through him, yet, as you know, could not endure organic chemistry or surgery. As Goethe famously said, "In vain you wander through the paths of science. One learns only what one is capable of learning." This reveals my second trait. I am a dreamer and a romantic, but am not lost. I am well aware of my interests, and I relentlessly seek a scientific method for them. As for the connection to dreams, until the 19th century, the prevailing belief was that dreams were a bridge between us and the heavens, much like Homer described in the Iliad, where Zeus sends dreams to mortals. However, with the rise of Darwinism and neuroscience, a fierce opposing idea emerged, that dreams are merely chemical and electrical reactions within the brain, stripped of any mystical connection. As a teenage medical student, I was obsessed with neuroscience and the brain, yet the seed of a fundamentally different idea about dreams was taking root within me. It was an idea that did not fully ripen until after finished my studies, eventually becoming the source of my fame and the influence that resonates throughout the world today.
How did you first become interested in studying dreams and delving so deeply into them?
The fundamental idea struck me while I was attending a play in Vienna. I used to spend a vast amount of my time reading poetry and watching theater. While watching Shakespeare's The Tempest, my keen senses were arrested by those lines spoken by the protagonist. "We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep." Those words shook me to my core, and a vague idea began to take shape in my mind. Dreams are not divine messages, nor are they mere chemical reactions. Instead, they are messages we send to ourselves, messages stemming from a dark, buried part within us. They tell us through dreams, hallucinations, or even bouts of hysteria, everything we are unable to say to ourselves while we are awake.
You said messages sent from a dark part within us. If these messages are from us and for us, why do they appear so cryptic and complex in dreams? Why can't we understand them clearly during our waking hours?
Our messages in dreams are cryptic and coded because within each of us resides a vigilant, internal censor. If these messages and the fears we harbor were explicit and clear, they would cause a shock so great it would prevent us from sleeping or shatter our very being. Therefore, the unconscious resorts to dream work to disguise these repressed desires, transforming them into symbols. This allows us to express them without waking up terrified of what we carry in our depths. When you ask about hysteria and the body's cry, you have touched the very essence of my discovery. The body begins to perform when society or fear forces the victim's mouth shut. What cannot be said by the tongue is translated into a paralyzed hand, a loss of sight, or muscle spasms. It is an alternative, painful language used by the unconscious to tell the world, I am here. I am in pain. Listen to me.
That makes sense. Moving beyond the world of dreams, how did your life unfold? What path did you take during those years?
I was somewhat late in earning my doctorate compared to my peers, but was fully aware that I needed that title. I understood that to gain the right to speak freely and win scientific recognition for my strange ideas, I first had to establish a prestigious academic standing at the university. In 1881, I received my PhD in neurophysiology, the field I had pursued with such passion, under my mentor, Bruca. I opened a private clinic and, to be honest, I faced initial failure as expected. However, 5 years later, I succeeded in securing a scholarship to Paris. I went there to study at the famous Salpêtrière Clinic to be closer to those dreamlike phenomena that had long captivated me.
You were late in earning your degree because you followed your passion rather than the curriculum. Didn't you feel anxious as you watched your peers surpass you? How did you maintain to manage your composure and patience amidst this academic delay? I'm asking this because I find myself in a very similar situation right now, and I'm looking for a perspective or perhaps a word of advice for myself and for many others who feel like they have fallen behind.
What you are describing is not merely academic anxiety, it is an existential struggle that I personally fought within the halls of Vienna University for many long years. I deeply understand that ache at the lump in your throat as you watch the caravan move forward while you feel as though you are standing still, or so you think. Here is my perspective based on my own journey, which I hope will light the darkness of your concern. First, the illusion of the race and the reality of maturation. I used to watch my peers graduate as punctually as Swiss watches, while I spent endless hours dissecting the neurons of eels in Bruca's lab or drowning in philosophical texts that had nothing to do with my exams. Was I anxious? Yes. But I knew a secret they didn't. Those who rush to reach the finish line often arrive empty-handed. I wasn't falling behind, I was allowing my seeds to grow in the depths. I was building a colossal foundation for an idea that would later change the course of history. So, my advice to you: do not compare your internal clock to others' external clock. Your superego, the voice representing society and its expectations, is scolding you right now, saying, the caravan has left you behind. But I tell you as a psychoanalyst, sometimes delay is the smartest defense mechanism your subconscious performs. Perhaps you are not ready to emerge yet. Perhaps your character needs more reading, more failure, or even more confusion to reach its full maturity. Do not look at your peers as superior, but as individuals who chose a different path, a paved and ready road. You, however, seem to be building your own path, and building a road always takes much longer than simply walking upon one.
Wow, it's such a relief. Okay, so please continue. What happened during your time in Paris?
In Paris, I met my mentor, Jean-Martin Charcot, a man I have never hesitated to call a genius. Charcot was dedicated to the study of hypnosis and cases of hysteria, those strange conditions where physical symptoms, such as paralysis or loss of speech, manifest without any apparent organic cause in the body. Charcot believed in something revolutionary at the time, the possibility of treating these cases through suggestion. I was completely captivated by the idea that these symptoms stemmed from causes lying outside the realm of traditional organic medicine. The very medicine I felt an internal aversion toward. Although Charcot's ideas seemed naive to some back then, or even performative, much like they might appear to you in old cinematic clips, for me, they were the first and most decisive step toward thinking outside the organic box.
Dr. Freud, you were a neurologist who believed in matter and the scalpel. How were you able to accept the idea that a word or a suggestion could heal a paralysis that even the most powerful drugs failed to cure?
I accepted it because in Paris, I saw with my own eyes a paralysis vanish before a word uttered by Charcot. It led me to realize that a nerve can be perfectly intact while the mind is the one issuing an order to shut down as a result of trauma or a repressed idea. When the scalpel fails to reach a deep wound in the soul, the word becomes the only tool capable of diving into those depths. This is how I transformed from a neurologist searching for matter into an analyst convinced that the soul has its own language, understood only by those who master the art of listening and translation. I realized that the power an idea holds to disable the body can only be countered by the power of another idea of equal strength.
What happened when you returned from Paris? You were full of enthusiasm for these new methods. How did you begin to implement them?
I returned to Vienna, haunted by financial pressures. My impending marriage demanded immediate stability. Thus, I opened my private practice to implement the revolutionary lessons I had brought from Paris. I tried to share this knowledge through university lectures, but I was met with a wall of mockery and rejection. My colleagues and professors dismissed hypnosis and hysteria as mere myths and nonsense, unbecoming of a respectable physician. This rejection did not break my spirit. Rather, it drove me away from their noise and traditional methods. I began adopting a radically new approach. Instead of issuing commands or obsessing over organic diagnosis, I would sit in silence, allowing my patients to speak freely and without limits. I let them delve into their memories until they reached, through the flow of words, the first buried trauma behind their suffering, realizing that true healing begins when a patient dares to speak the unspeakable.
Why the shift from hypnosis to free speech? Did you find the conscious mind more relieving than the hypnotic state?
Hypnosis was an authoritarian method that compelled me to impose my will upon the patient. Its results were temporary and fragile. Symptoms often resurfaced as soon as the effect of the suggestion wore off. Moreover, many patients simply did not respond to hypnosis at all. However, I discovered that the patient's voice, while in a state of full alertness and relaxation, in what I later called free associations, the true key to the soul. The truth that emerges from a patient's lips while they struggle against their psychological resistances is a living and authentic truth, not merely an echo of my commands. Yes, the conscious voice is far more powerful because healing does not occur by suppressing the mind, but by bringing those dark fragments of the unconscious and placing them under the spotlight of consciousness. This can only happen when the patient finds the courage to voice everything their mind rejects, ultimately reaching a profound self-understanding and changing from the roots, rather than just wiping symptoms off the surface.
So right now you're working in isolation, rejected by the medical world. What is next for you?
At that stage of my struggle, Joseph Breuer entered my life, a man often overlooked by history, despite his pivotal role in the birth of psychoanalysis. Breuer was 15 years my senior, coming from a wealthy and stable background, a sharp contrast to my own circumstances at the time. Yet, despite our differing social and economic backgrounds, we converged on one point: a profound interest in treating hysteria through hypnosis. You must grasp the medical consensus of that era. The term hysteria was derived from the Greek word hystra, meaning womb. Consequently, my colleagues viewed these cases with disdain, believing that women were merely feigning illness to gain attention or suffering from trivial organic malfunctions. But the truth went much deeper, revealing itself through the most famous case in history, Bertha Pappenheim, known to us as Anna O. She was a young woman in her 20s, suffering from mutism, intermittent paralysis of her limbs, and severe coughing fits, all without any tangible medical explanation. Anna O was the true key that unlocked everything. She taught us that behind every physical symptom, there lies a story yet to be told.
So while the world was busy with electricity and technology, you and Brower were digging into the stories of outcast women. I see it as a human revolution before it was a medical one. It is a truly great thing.
It was indeed a human revolution before it was a medical one. While the world believed that progress lay in electrical wires and the inventions of Bell and Edison, we were attempting to repair the shattered electrical circuits within the human soul. Consider the case of Bertha Pappenheim, or Anna O, as we call her. Her family took her to dozens of doctors. She swallowed every kind of medicine, and they tried every conventional medical trick, yet everyone stood helpless. Why? Because her suffering was not mentioned in the medical textbooks where we studied organic wounds. Her wound was in a place the scalpel could never reach. In 1890, I was not yet the Freud you know today. I was merely a doctor watching in awe as my mentor and friend Joseph Breuer worked. Breuer was a senior and highly respected physician, and it was he who first began to truly talk with her. He noticed something revolutionary. When the patient entered a state of hypnosis and began recounting specific memories, she would suddenly grow calm, and the symptoms that had baffled every doctor began to improve. At that moment, for the first time in human history, what we call the talking cure was born. I observed Breuer and recorded my notes hungrily. As I noted in my memoirs, I saw the patient, under hypnosis, relive a past situation to accomplish in her imagination what she had suppressed in reality. Once she gave voice to that bottled-up emotion, the symptoms vanished forever. We realized that those symptoms, without an organic explanation, such as paralysis or mutism, were nothing but shadows of forgotten experiences, traumatic incidents the patient could not act upon at the time. Thus, the memory remained trapped within her, screaming through her body.
But why do we forget such pain? I mean, why must these memories stay buried in the unconscious mind?
Breuer's explanation at the time was that she was experiencing what he termed a hypnoid state. This is a condition where consciousness resembles a coma-like trance due to extreme terror or shock. The mind essentially flees into a state similar to sleep. Consequently, the function of hypnosis was to reopen those locked rooms of memory. Once the patient remembered the incident and found the courage to say what had never been spoken, the healing began.
So, Dr. Freud, this is the exact point where you and Breuer went separate ways. He thought the mind just went numb during trauma, but you saw something deeper, a force called repression. You realized we don't forget because our brain fails, but because the truth too painful for our morals and desires to handle. Is this how it started?
Breuer and I released our joint work, Studies on Hysteria, where we detailed our therapeutic method, or to be more precise, Breuer's own technique. Although this book is recognized today as the cornerstone of psychoanalytic history, it achieved no scientific resonance or notable success when it first appeared. In fact, it was met with abysmal failure. Faced with this splendid failure, Breuer decided to withdraw. He deemed it nonsense, unworthy of respectable physicians. Being a man of great wealth, as I mentioned before, he felt no need to endure the commotion or the professional battles that he could well do without, especially given his natural inclination to avoid confrontation. And so Breuer abandoned the path of psychiatry and psychoanalysis, leaving me to walk it alone halfway through the journey.
Dr. Freud, while Breuer went back to the safety of physical medicine, why did you choose the harder and more mysterious path? And what made you realize that Breuer's idea about hypnotic state were not enough to understand the patient's tragedy?
I wasn't comfortable with Breuer's theory that the patient loses consciousness during a trauma. I was sure that she was fully aware of everything happening to her. I saw that painful experiences and the feeling of being helpless make the patient hide those feelings in the subconscious. This is where I created the term repression. That simple idea, which started in my mind years ago while listening to a Shakespeare play, finally became clear and convincing. Dreams, messages from the buried part of us, the subconscious. Symptoms, the result of being totally unable to deal with the things buried in that mind.
I want to ask, what happens to the patient when they finally uncover the hidden memory and speak it?
The solution did not lie in hypnosis, but in what I termed free association. This meant allowing the patient to speak without any interruption, letting their thoughts wander and pull one another along. I would sit with them, seeking to understand and interpret their dreams until we reached what I called catharsis, the moment the patient is finally able to express repressed things and be cleansed of them. I was carving out these concepts and terms with a sense of poetry, yet with absolute gravity. I was fully aware that I was offering something entirely new and monumental to humanity.
Okay, what happened next? You were all alone with a concept that no one supported and no one understood but you. How did things go from there?
The persistence and perseverance of someone enchanted by an idea make them see nothing but the path ahead, regardless of the mockery or rejection of others. For 5 full years, I did nothing but bring patients into my clinic in Vienna and let them talk, while I sat recording the observations that finally crystallized in 1900 in my book, The Interpretation of Dreams, the work in which I solidified every idea I had reached until that moment. Perhaps you are waiting for this to be the moment of success after a series of disappointments, but in reality, no one had even heard of the book. It went so unnoticed that I wrote in my memoirs, the book was my losing horse, and nobody paid it any attention.
Today, 125 years after its release, the book, known as one of the most influential in history, was supposed to set the world on fire and become a bestseller. You were supposed to finally taste the certainty of success and the significant recognition you deserved after all that striving. But it is life. Perhaps if you had social media back then, you would gone viral across all platforms.
It should have played it safe and found a job to support my family, but if had, we wouldn't be talking today. I decided to focus on my clinic and practice my therapy no matter what the conditions were.
How did the Vienna Medical Board permit you to continue your practice this way? Why didn't they close your clinic down?
The answer lies in my realistic and practical side. I was pragmatic in my relationship with the University of Vienna. Despite our differences, I made sure to obtain the title of professor in 1902 to secure my legal and official right to lecture and practice my work lawfully. Moreover, my literary activities made me well known in intellectual circles that grasped my ideas, and it was from these circles that my patients came people who truly trusted me. At the time, I was doing nothing more than talking with my patients. There were no scientific or surgical experiments for anyone to prohibit. With remarkable perseverance, I developed my skills in retrieving their buried experiences, dreams, and childhood memories. I began to gain fame in Viennese circles, which prompted medical students and those eager to learn to visit me. So I established a weekly meeting for them every Wednesday in my clinic at 14 Berggasse Street.
And how did these small gatherings turn into an army of followers? And how were you able to make this a formal institution despite everyone's opposition?
These meetings became regular after I received my title as a professor. More and more people joined us every day until we started our first official group in 1908, the Vienna Psychoanalytic Society. I was smart enough to call it a Verein, which means an association or a club. I chose this name to avoid any legal or scientific trouble with the university professors who hated my work. Soon we held the first conference based on my ideas in Salzburg. By 1910, we became a reality that no one could ignore. We were now a school with our own books, followers, and conferences. We even formed the International Psychoanalytical Association, IPA, which every specialist in the world still knows today.
Tell us about this peak moment. Do you feel that you've made your great escape from the dissection rooms and physical medicine? Have you finally built your own realm where you can combine medicine with the philosophy of Nietzsche and the spirit of Shakespeare?
Everything went legally and slowly. More people began to believe in psychoanalysis until it became a strong movement that no one could stop. When we started the association, I was practical. I chose not to be the president because I was Jewish and wanted the group to grow. I took an honorary role and made my brilliant student Carl Gustav Jung the president. This was the peak for the dreaming young man who loved poetry. Even though he ended up in medical school without a plan, he was patient until he created a new kind of medicine. In this medicine, the doctor listens to people talking freely. He uses the ideas of Nietzsche, Dostoevsky, and Shakespeare to understand his patients. This is what we call psychoanalysis. The personality traits I have described managed to propel me to the pinnacle of my glory. By 1914, my name became as valuable as a gold sovereign, and my school flourished with disciples and devoted followers.
But like any good story, after the climax comes the turning point, the moment of breaking. What went wrong after you reached the top?
Indeed, I was struck by several heavy blows, each one more devastating than the last. First, my famous disciple, Jung, who was my right hand, and like a son to me, broke away, just as I had done with Breuer 20 years earlier. The way I describe Jung's departure makes it feel like a betrayal rather than a mere professional disagreement. If my separation from Breuer, or more accurately, his separation from me, had allowed me to claim the legacy of psychoanalysis for myself, this time the situation was entirely different. I was now the one forced to defend my ideas against Jung and his attacks on me.
Why did all that happen, and why did he attack you after being your closest person and the one you trusted the most?
Jung believed I narrowed everything down to repressed motives, while he saw the unconscious as something much bigger. He talked about the collective unconscious that all humans share. To him, my view was too narrow because it focused only on primal instincts.
So how do you defend your idea that the unconscious is entirely driven by sexual impulses against someone who sees it as a vaster realm encompassing myths, religion, and spiritual creativity, as Jung suggested?
My defense is simple but painful. Jung didn't make the unconscious bigger, he just decorated it because he was afraid of the truth. People say I simplified everything to biological drives. That's like blaming a chemist for saying the whole world is made of atoms. The atom is tiny, but it's the foundation. Life energy, what I call the vital drive, is the foundation for all the great things Jung talks about. Jung took the easy way out, the path of spirits and old stories. He wanted to avoid the real struggle. He didn't help science grow. He pushed it back into the dark ideas I tried to save medicine from. Jung didn't just hurt my career. He hurt me as a friend by choosing a pretty lie instead of the difficult truth.
Yes, and after that, the World War I broke out during this time, right?
Yes, that's right.
The World War shook the entire world, but how specifically did it shake your world, Mr. Freud?
The war shook my life to its core. It struck the economy and specifically decimated the bourgeoisie, who were my main supporters and source of income. Suddenly, I was left with no friends, no disciples, and no patients. Only a world war raging outside my windows. To make matters worse, the Spanish flu pandemic began to spread, taking from me my daughter Sophie, who was the closest to my heart. I used to love sitting and playing with her after work, sharing stories of my day, feeling so much joy in the room I had specially designed for her in our beautiful home. At the end of this grueling phase, I discovered I had jaw cancer, a disease that would accompany me on a journey of agony until my final days, amidst this overwhelming frustration and profound grief.
They say that great pain gives birth to great ideas. Were these consecutive tragedies, the war, death, and the cancer, what pushed you to reevaluate your theories and introducing the concept of death drive, Thanatos, along the life drive?
You hit the truth exactly. A person watching from the outside might think my theories are just cold ideas from a clinic, but the truth is, my biggest ideas were born from ruins, blood, and tears. Before these tragedies, I thought Eros, the life drive, was the only thing moving humans. I thought we only wanted pleasure and survival. But World War I shocked me. I saw millions of people running toward death with a strange desire for destruction. It was an aggression that pleasure couldn't explain. Then losing Sophie was the final stab. It made me realize that death is not just a biological end, but a powerful force that pulls us in.
What exactly is the essence of this death drive, and what does Thanatos represent in the human psyche?
I noticed that soldiers don't forget the pain of war. They relive it in nightmares. I also saw people stay in bad relationships trying to fix others, even when there is no hope. These behaviors led me to write my 1920 book, Beyond the Pleasure Principle, where I talked about the death drive. I realized that humans are moved by two opposite desires, the wish for life and pleasure, Eros, and the wish for death or destruction, Thanatos. Mental problems happen when these two are not in balance. This idea led to my famous model in the book, The Ego and the Id, where I divided the mind into three parts. The id, our basic instincts and hidden desires. The ego, our conscious mind and the rules we live by. The superego, our conscience and the perfect image we want to reach. Because we aren't perfect, it makes us feel constant guilt and shame.
You sparked a revolution in your time by providing the first total framework for the soul. In your view, does the power of psychoanalysis stem from its scientific rigor, or from its rhetorical resonance and its capacity to reach the depths of actual human experience?
What I am saying might sound more like philosophy than science, or maybe even poetry. But that doesn't change the fact that I started a real revolution in medicine and psychoanalysis. I was the first to try and explain the whole human mind and its hidden motives. Even though these ideas are complex, they still make sense today. You can see your own feelings and actions in them. You can see how guilt controls and spoils your life. That is when you will finally understand what I meant by the superego, that silent judge inside your soul.
Said that pain either breaks you or makes you a legend. Despite many surgeries and the terrible pain from your prosthetic jaw, your writing still influences the whole world. Do you feel, have you become the person you've always wanted to be? How did your ideas become a fortress that even cancer could not destroy?
I have firmly taken my place as the leader of psychoanalysis. I have become a symbol of influence that the whole world recognizes. Despite all the sadness I faced, I feel that I found my voice again. I am finally the person I always wanted to be. Even though cancer is eating away at my jaw and I have to endure a painful prosthetic and countless surgeries, I never stop my work. To me, ideas are the only fortress that sickness cannot destroy. My story was supposed to end at that point with a final lesson presented. But unfortunately, Hitler had a different opinion. In May 1933, at the age of 77, I woke up to smoke filling the streets. Nazi students had decided to burn 25,000 books of all kinds, specifically targeting books by Jews, or those they deemed against the German spirit, or containing what they called degenerate content. Naturally, my books possessed all those flaws in their eyes. I was Jewish, I spoke of psychoanalysis, the death drive, and the sense of shame, not to mention my discourse on sexual motives.
Dr. Freud, why didn't you leave Vienna as soon as the danger began to surround you and your books? What were the circumstances you faced during those dark years?
My inner circle urged me to flee, but I simply replied, "But I am still able to write and sit with my patients." For 5 long years, the Nazis hounded me. They raided my home repeatedly and detained my daughter. In 1938, having passed the age of 80, I finally realized that my departure was inevitable. They forced me to sign a declaration stating that they had treated me with respect, exacted a massive financial bond from me, and granted me a one-way exit visa. I abandoned Vienna and my clinic at Berggasse to seek refuge in London.
Yes, where you died 1 year later in 1939 and buried at Golders Green. Thank you for everything, Dr. Freud, and thank you guys for watching, and goodbye.